Hey, this is Chad with Be Gone for Good. Today, I'm going to be doing an oil change on the 2017 Africa Twin DCT version. I'm going to leave a link below for all of the tools and supplies that I needed to make sure that this oil change went off. I screwed things up a little bit, had a couple of day delay in there, as you'll see in the video. If you take care of this and watch my list, you'll make sure that everything's on hand, that you can get this done in one shot. It's a super easy job as long as you remember to have everything. Before we get started, I want to give a big shout out to all of my subscribers. We went over 2,500 today, and I wanted to say a big thank you again. Everybody's getting that word out. It's growing the channel really well, and I really appreciate it from everybody. If you want to support the channel a little bit further, I've got a link down below to my Patreon page. For as little as $3 a month, you get a lot of extra behind the scenes updates, can get involved in Q&As with me, all sorts of extra stuff down there, as well as some swag like stickers and t-shirts and coasters and all sorts of stuff. So if you're interested in supporting the channel a little bit further, definitely check out that link. If not, no big deal. I appreciate you coming in and stopping by for the view. Let's get to it. All right, so I took a little hiatus because the O-ring that goes on this cap for the DCT portion, I did not have that exact O-ring, did not have the exact part number for this little guy right here. So I will leave the part number down below in the description, along with everything else that I needed for this, so that you can make sure that you have the proper O-ring before you get started, so you don't have to take a 2-day break and lose the great weather, and can instead just have this ready to go right when you start up. All right, so this filter, you've got a black washer on this end and like a seating area for the spring on this end. Make sure that black washer is going in towards the engine so that you have this spring area out. The spring will sit in there and essentially hold this tight against that fitting in there as well. Then you have to grease the fitting or oil the O-ring that goes on. They say to get a new O-ring each time you do this, which makes sense. It's a cheap part, it wears, so you want to make sure that every time you're changing out your oil, you're putting on a new O-ring, keeping that fresh. This is a bad place to have a point of failure if you were going to have one. All right, now I'm going to go around and I'm going to tighten everything up to spec, given the torque wrench settings that are in the Haynes manual. All right, so I've got the two bolts refitted in there. They are magnetic bolts to try and draw any sort of
metal that ends up getting in that oil to them, so it's not circulating in the oil over and over again. I don't know how important they are, but for an extra like $1 a piece, it's not that big of a deal. So I put those in there. I've got the cap over on the other side for the DCT filter. That's all taken care of. That's put in. I've got the new filter on up here, the K&N. Everything is tightened down to spec at this point. It tells me to remove the dipstick and the fill cap and to start putting the oil in. So now that's what I'm going to do. Now to check and make sure I didn't miss the spot. Okay, now comes the interesting part. So they say to take the dipstick, and because it was already unscrewed, all we're doing is just resting the dipstick up to these threads, okay? So you don't screw it all the way in, you just rest those threads on the engine and then take a reading from there. Okay, so rest it on the engine, taking a reading, and what we're looking for is the oil to be up to about this line, and as you can see, it's already there. So I put 4 quarts in, and now I'm gonna have to run it and kind of get some of this oil into the engine and whatever, and see if there's any more I need to add after that. But if I'd gone the full 4.5 right off the bat, I probably would have overfilled this line on that mark. So again, I'll show you, pulling it out. Yep, we're coming right up to that high line on there just by resting it in there. So I will put all this back in, start it up, run it for a couple of minutes just so that the bike has an opportunity to kind of send some of that oil around and get it into the filters and all that sort of stuff. And then we'll come back, check it again, and put in any more oil that's needed at that point. Okay, while that's running for a couple of minutes, let me just run through some of the salient points that I think need to be remembered as you start doing this. One, for the DCT owners out there, make sure you get that O-ring. I've left the part number down below in the description just so that you're not guessing at it. I had a hard time finding it because I couldn't see it on the specs, but it is there. I have the part number down below. I'll leave a link so that you can find it, no problem. Make sure you have all your gear, everything that you need to tighten and untighten and fix and whatever it is before you get started. It really is kind of a pain to have to stop midway through to go find a tool or something along those lines. It's just so much easier, so much swifter if you can be efficient about it. This is obviously not groundbreaking. I don't do a ton of maintenance on the bike, so it's kind of new to me. And if you're newer at this, save yourself a lot of trouble and get everything ready before you get started. Again, I've left everything down in the description so you can find all the tools I used, everything you need to get it done. Also, if you're going off of just a YouTube video or the manual, I suggest you get the Haynes manual. They're not wildly easy to find, but they are super helpful for any sort of maintenance you're going to do on the bike. Everything goes into a lot more detail. You've got pictures in there. It's just if you're going to be doing maintenance on the bike, it's almost it's a must-have, and it's a relatively cheap item once you can find it. So I'd go that route. Other than that, everything seems to be pretty easy. Make sure that you do your conversions beforehand too. If your torque settings are in Newton meters and you've got foot-pounds, make those changes and write them down on the piece of paper beforehand so you're not looking that up while you're trying to do it. Same thing with quarts versus liters. Make sure that you're doing all of that adjustment and modification before you get started, so it's not something that you have to try and figure out sitting next to the bike. That's kind of a pain. So all that stuff should be done beforehand. One of the things I forgot to put on my list was a funnel. Luckily we had one here at the house, so it's not a huge issue, but I just didn't think about the fact that I wouldn't be able to pour a nice neat line of oil directly into that fuel hole or that fill hole. So make sure that you've got a funnel on hand as well. Other than that, it's a pretty routine job, pretty easy. I'm guessing first time is going to be the toughest for this one, and everything after that is just kind of a cakewalk. So hopefully we'll get this all done, squared away. I'll be able to ride it, make sure that things are working properly, that we have no leaks, and then we'll be set up and good to go. Put the bash plate back on, and I'll be ready to ride. All right, everything looks good. We don't have any leaks right now. I'll give it just a couple of minutes to kind of cool down, settle a little bit, and then I will check the level again, fill up any needed oil that needs to go in there from there. And it looks like we should be just about done. I am pleased with how well that went. Obviously it was a 2-day thing because I didn't have that one O-ring. That one O-ring is the only thing that kind of screwed me up. And obviously now that you've seen this video, that won't happen to you. But other than that, fairly simple job. So all right, now that I've checked it, it seems that the oil level is down to almost that first line, so all the way on the bottom, not that middle line. So I'm going to be adding oil a little bit at a time, checking it out, and measuring, seeing where that fill line is. And once I get the oil level in between those two lines pretty reliably, then I will be good to go. All right, I feel pretty good about that last measurement. Everything looks like it should be, that it is where it belongs. So I'm gonna button everything back up and go for a little ride. All right, so I got everything put back together yesterday. I ran it, rode around for a little bit, like 20 minutes or so. Everything seems to be holding. There are no leaks, there's no drips, everything's good. Oil pressure, light went off, everything's perfect. So at this point, all I'm gonna do is put the bash plate back on, and I think I'm good to go. So this has been oil changing on the AT with the DCT. Again, I think the hardest part of this is just making sure you've got all your gear. So I'm gonna try and do a really extensive list of all the tools that I used, all the parts that you need to get this done, and we'll put that all down in the description. So as long as you go through that entire list, you should be set. And I'll make a designation for DCT versus non-DCT items that are needed. So you're not bringing out stuff you don't need or skipping stuff that you do need. So if you have any questions, anything else, leave a comment down below. I'll try and get back to you on it. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching the first oil change that I've done on the 2017 AT DCT. Liberty is feeling better. She's riding better. Everything looks great. Now, if we can just get out from underneath this this stay-at-home thing, we'll be all set. Thanks a lot.